1, blast off. Today is 6/17, June 17th, 2019. And we have an interesting lesson to learn tonight. La, 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 la. Hi, Stacy. How are you? Just talked to you earlier today. Jackie, nice to see you. Where are you from, everyone? Tell me where you're from. I'd love to see it. It's so much fun to see where folks are from. Okay, let's see. Dana, hi. Natalie, hi. Hello. Nathalie. Granbury, Texas. Tammy's from Michigan. Joanne's from Tennessee. Hello, Jerry. Hi, Dara Lynn. Hi, clients and friends and students and people that I so enjoy working with. You know, I was just commenting to my husband the other day. I think I said this last time, that, you know, when you finish raising your kids and when at the end of the day you work all day long, and then at the end of the day, it's just the two of you and, and the dog. And then our children come over. We just had dinner with our sons tonight, and one of my sons' lovely girlfriend. And but that's our social life. That's our social life. And so my social life actually feels like when I work during the day, even though it's my professional life, there's so much pleasure in getting to know people. And one of the things that I've said for years is that people hand me their pearls. They trust me. And because of that, it is an incredible privilege. And it's what I mean by handing me their pearls. They hand me wisdom. People, it's not about knowledge. Knowledge is good, but it's about wisdom. And when people have suffered, or their child has suffered, or their loved one has suffered, and that's why they're working with homeopathy, why they're working with me, insights grow. And with these insights, we build our wisdom and we have more depth. And so I get it from others. People give it to me. It's just so incredible. Nancy from Texas, Joanne from Tennessee. Hello, Jerry. Hi from Michigan, California, Josh. Hi, Dallas, Newberry, Pittsburgh, Ohio. Hi, Donna. Haven, Florida. Lynn Haven, Florida. Ohio, wonderful, wonderful. Milwaukee, I love it. DC, I used to live in DC. Very pretty city. South Carolina, Oklahoma. All righty. So I was singing this song that it's been haunting me. I don't know that I can do it as well as the singer, the original singer. La, la, da, da, la, da, 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 la. Check out Walter, the singing French bulldog. It is hysterical. I think it is, because I love animals, especially dogs, and you mix that with music, and someone has put it to music, and they use a harpsichord, and they make it into a concerto in B flat minor, and he's singing in B flat minor, and then there's and he waits, when there's a concerto, there's the entry, and then waits. It's as though the dog is listening. Okay, this is where I come in, and then he starts to sing. It's hysterical. So check it out, folks. It'll just give you a giggle. My son thinks I'm crazy that I'm so obsessed about this dog, but I think it's, anytime you can find something that's funny, it's great. And I think animals are a kick. I think they're just hysterical. When I walk on the beach, I see the birds as they patter around in the water, and their elbows are backwards, their knees are not their elbows, their knees. Their knees don't bend forward, they bend backwards. It's hysterical. And then they got those really cute little feet, and usually their legs, the orange of their legs matches the orange of their beak. It's just a hoot, literally a hoot. So today I'm going to talk about belladonna, beautiful woman, belladonna. Donna's woman, Bella's beautiful. Remember, this is Latin. It's easy to remember when you think of it from that point of view. It's a controversial remedy. And I'm not going to go too much into the controversy, but I will tell you that it is an incredible medicine when used appropriately. So years ago, it was Easter. I've actually told this story before, but not on Facebook. It was Easter Sunday, and my second son had a fever, and he was about, I'm going to say he was about 3 or 4. And his fevers were not mild. His fevers would go pretty high. He'd go to 105, 104, and it would go bam, and suddenly he'd have a fever. He'd be playing, and then all of a sudden it would just hit him. And it was belladonna, and I would give him belladonna, and what I mean it was belladonna, that is the picture of a belladonna fever. And so I would give him belladonna, and it would just knock him out. He'd go right to sleep, wake up 2-3 hours, sometimes sleep the whole night. And the next morning he'd wake up and he'd be perfectly fine. I mean, perfectly fine. I didn't have to do it too many times because when you use a medicine time and again, even in an acute, such as a fever in a child, it uproots the propensity for this to recur time and again. So the idea tonight is to, let me finish the story first. So this particular Easter, I recognized that exactly what was happening, and that my son was going to get a very high fever because he came to be slightly high, and then within, I would say within 10 minutes, he was burning hot. His face was bright red, and he'd get this far off look, kind of a starry-eyed look, and I knew exactly what to do. And my aunt was over for Easter, and she said, "Oh, Joette, you got to call the doctor. You got to go to the hospital or something. Look at this. Look how sick he is." I said, No. Watch this, Aunt Mary. Just watch what happens. I'll give him this medicine, and watch. Within about 5 minutes, he'll fall right to sleep. And if you're still here, because it's still, it's this Easter celebration, then you will witness this medicine. If you happen not to be, I'll call you in the morning and tell you how he's doing. So I gave him belladonna, and lo and behold, he fell asleep. Excuse me, I have a frog in my throat. I gave him the belladonna, and within 3 minutes, 5 minutes, bonk, out on the couch while we were all in the living room. I picked him up, carried him into his bedroom. Didn't have to cover him too much, a little bit light sheet to make sure that he was enough covered because he might turn chilly from perspiring so heavily. And indeed, he fell asleep for about 4 hours. When he woke up, he got out of bed, and he walked out, and he started playing with his brothers, and he was as robust as ever. So it was one of those things where I could absolutely count on it. It was excellent. And I could count on it because it was so extreme, so fast. Quick onset, extreme high fever, glazed eye look, that is belladonna. Now, the reason that I titled tonight's discussion, Get Your Kids High, is because it's not really necessary, I don't believe, in childhood illnesses to treat a fever. You might find that you can't resist. You might want to treat it because now you know what to use, especially if it's a high fever. Belladonna 30 is what I used. I used 30X in those days because that was what was available, but 30C is just as acceptable. Excuse me while I take a sip of water. And so allowing your child to get really high fevers is a method of cure. Now, we're talking about normal childhood illness. We're not talking about an adult with 104, 105 fever. We're talking about a child. For the longest time, the American Academy of Pediatrics said it should be any high fever, which is above 103.5, should be met with acetaminophen. Then they changed their tune, and that was about, I'm going to say I kind of noticed it because I always look on their site for this. I keep waiting for them to catch on. Homeopaths have known about the importance of fever for 200 some years and how to treat it should you feel compelled to do so. But recently, I'm going to say the last 10 years, maybe, the American Academy of Pediatrics has now said, I did not check it, recently, the last 6 months or so, but the last time I checked, it read something like fever is not the disease, and it often can be left alone and allowed to correct. I don't think they use the word correct. Allowed to cook off. I'm not sure exactly the terminology. The illness, and that is indeed what a fever does. If you allow a fever to get good and hot and robust, it's like going into the sauna and cooking off all of the bugs, the microorganisms, the viruses, the bacteria infection. We're talking about childhood illness, regular childhood illness, garden variety. We're not talking about fever after a head injury, okay? So that you can distinguish. We're not talking about fever from stroke or a heat stroke. That's not what we're talking about. But the fever itself is not dangerous. It is understood today that instead the danger in fever is, let's see if anyone knows. Let's see what people come up with. What is the danger when a child has fever? Let's see. Now it's 100.4, Angela says. Okay, so now they're saying, oh, for goodness sakes, 100 degrees. See, I don't think that 100-degree fever is robust enough. How is it going to cook anything off? We need it to really heat up, and that's why I call it get your kids high. Allow them to get good and hot. Let's see what other people are saying. This is for any type of fever or stemming from a specific illness. Any type of fever, but for head injuries, a fever that is as a result of a head injury or from heat stroke. That is different. We're talking about a fever that comes from an infection as a result of a virus or bacteria infection, such as a systemic, like a cold, a flu, chicken pox, that kind of thing. That's what we're looking for. Let's see if anyone has come up with. They come up with the answer, Perry? Do you see that?
Yeah.
You bet, Chris. Dehydration is the concern. Febrile seizure is not the concern. Dehydration, good job. Good job. Dehydration is the danger. Dehydration is dangerous. There's no doubt about it. I can't wait for the day when we can buy an IV at the drugstore or get it online, a saline solution, and we can just insert it ourselves, learn how to do it, and insert it ourselves so that our loved ones who have no ability to drink, and that does happen when people are sick, they can get their fluids of just electrolytes or salt. So it's not febrile seizures. That's not the danger. There is no danger to febrile seizures from high fevers. It's a horrible thing to witness, no doubt about it. And usually if your child has a febrile seizure from a high fever, and that's usually the way it is, it's not from the height of the fever, it's from the onset of it. It's a quick shift from normal temperature to very high temperature, and that's where the seizure comes from. It's a neurological response to something that is too extreme, from one extreme to the other, not how extreme the other is, but from normal temperature to 103, bam, fast. That's when a febrile seizure can come on. By the time you get your child to the hospital, an emergency room, even if you live right down the street, that seizure will be over with, and they'll do nothing but administer Tylenol, acetaminophen, something like that, just to appease the parents, because to be honest, there is nothing that can be done. And it's not until the body regulates itself and is capable of, okay, I got this high fever, now I get it. I understand where I should be in this depth and breadth of heat. That is what a febrile seizure is. Now, if a child has a febrile seizure, and or they have high fever, belladonna is for red, hot, and even neurological responses. So when I saw my son with those glazing eyes, it's almost an otherworldly look. They look glassy, or the eyes can look bloodshot and red. Or if there's pain, such as with otitis media, in conjunction with the fever, it's very likely belladonna. Or if the ear is red from the otitis media. So red, hot, glazed look, hot, a quick onset, not had a little fever Tuesday, then it went away, a little slight fever Wednesday, then it went away, or then it just dropped down a little Thursday, maybe a little bit. That's not quick onset. Quick onset is at 10 o'clock this morning, perfectly fine. At 11 o'clock, bam, in comes that fever, or in comes that ear infection, or in comes that strep throat. The remedy is belladonna. I use it in a 30C. You could use it in a 30X. Most folks have 30C these days. And it is it's a severe remedy. So it can be for severe pain in the ear, severe pain in the throat, strep throat. If you're afraid of strep throat, be sure to read Dr. Robert Mendelssohn's book, How to Raise a Healthy Child in Spite of Your Doctor. I think I talked about that last time, but I can't help myself. It's such a great book, especially for those who are just learning this, so that you can gain confidence. Confidence, confidence, confidence. So when it comes to fluids and your child has a high fever, that is the concern. And a lot of times they don't want to drink. They're too feverish. They don't want to drink because they feel nauseous. They don't want to drink anything. So that's when you have to be creative. And what I've always done is I coated this, especially for this particular child, I coated the palms of his hands and the bottoms of his feet with olive oil, because there's a lot of fluid that is lost through perspiration in those two areas. I also would make homemade popsicles. I would, I would juice some oranges, juice some grapefruit, some lemons. Fresh is best. Make them, freeze them into popsicles, so they might be interested. In belladonna, there's often a lot of interest in lemon flavors. So lemonade. I used to make a lemonade instead of with white sugar. I would get apples and juice them. I think it was 1 apple to, I want to say 3, I can't remember, it's been so long now, 3 whole lemons, including the rind, including the entire outside, the skin, and juice that down. And the apple gave it some sweetness, and the lemons gave it the tartness and all the vitamin C. It's a great thing for them to drink. You do something that's going to be interesting to them. Ice chips with maple syrup, a little maple syrup, so that they're more likely to be interested in it. So you want to keep them hydrated as much as possible. And you're always looking. If you pull the skin up and it does not snap back pretty readily in a child or an adult, then you know there's dehydration potential. In a baby, the fontanelles start to sink. Not good. And if that were to happen, regardless of whether or not your child has a fever or not, and you can't get it done fast enough and get those fluids in, then I would get to the hospital, because an IV would be important. The problem with the hospital is this. Once you step foot in, that child belongs to them. That child no longer belongs to you. And so that's why I've always wanted to avoid it, at not every cost, but at some cost. And you have to weigh that out. But I would not be foolish if I thought my child was dehydrating beyond my capacity to protect him. Then by all means, I would get to the hospital. And I would deal with the consequences, or maybe there wouldn't be any consequence, but I would deal with the concerns later. So I'm looking in my Materia Medica here under belladonna, and low fevers and medium level pains are not generally belladonna. That's not usually a call for belladonna. Belladonna is pretty painful. Means that if you have a lot of pain, it's more likely to be belladonna. Not an injury. We're not talking about pains from injury or tennis elbow or arthritis. No. We're talking about fevers and infections, etc. But what I also love about belladonna is it can be used for migraines. Migraines are pretty extensive pain, very extreme pain. And a beautiful Banerjee protocol for migraines is to use picricum acidum, picricum, picricum acidum, acidum, picric acid for short, 200, usually in a 200C, and we take it along with or mix it with belladonna 3. That combination, and used as an SOS, meaning if it's very severe, it could even be every 15 minutes. If it's not that severe, then perhaps every 30 minutes, etc. So we're going to do more on headaches, and we'll be covering that soon. I want to give as much information to you folks as I possibly can. And I know that those are concerns that many people want to learn about. So picrocum acidum for migraine headaches as it's happening. That's why I call it an SOS. We use it as save our ship right then and there. But it's also great for strep throat. When the throat is not strep, it's been cultured and that's how you found out. No, you know it's strep because there's an odor or the pain is extreme. Oh my God, I can't even swallow. It hurts so much. And it's bright red. There can be white pustules. There can be white coating on the inside of the throat. Now that's a pretty good indication that it's strep. Once you see strep in your child, you will never forget it. You'll never forget it. You'll never forget the odor. Even before the child gets sick, some moms report to me, they know their child is going to have strep infection, strep throat, because there's a certain odor to the breath. And I believe that very much to be so. So it's a great medicine for strep throat. It's beautiful for strep throat. So let's see what else we can talk about here. What's severe? When I say severe, most folks think I'm talking about a fever that's a severe fever being 100, 101, just like that we just said. 100, 101, that's a fever to most people. That's nothing. Come on. We want to mount something really powerful. We want a fever that's going to kick out that virus or bacteria infection. That's what we're looking for. Now, if you don't have belladonna, I believe you can let it be. And I've done it with my kids. This particular time I didn't, mostly because I was showing off. To be honest, I was showing off to my aunt to say, watch this happen, Aunt Mary. This is amazing. It's gonna knock your socks off. Watch what happens. And I predicted it. I told her exactly what would happen. He'll sleep for a while and then he'll get up and he'll be perfectly fine. By the way, his cheeks were red. And I think I said that the cheeks get very red. Sometimes it's only one cheek that gets red. So 105 is a nice high fever. 104.5, those are high fevers. By the way, fevers don't go higher than 105, 106 in normal childhood illnesses. We don't see a fever of 109, a fever of 110. We might see that with a head injury. So now you have to think differently. And then I would use a homeopathic medicine for the head injury as well. I mean, we're not going to play around with that either. So let's just see what else we have here. Aconitum is also, aconitum and belladonna are often compared to each other because they have quick onsets and they're often for an infection that comes on quickly. Let's see. Yeah, it's studied, I've said it's studied in conjunction with aconitum because they're similar in their application for fevers, coughs, ear infections, and other infectious diseases. Both remedies are useful for an illness that has a quick onset. It comes on with a fury. Illnesses that call for belladonna and aconite have a powerful arrival with often extreme symptoms. Already, belladonna is great for teething. I've used belladonna for my children when they were little. I used Chamomilla 200C, and I sometimes would use belladonna, or I bought teething tablets that had belladonna in it, and it was the way to go. It worked every single time for my children. And as I used it, the more frequently I used it, of course, I would only use it as needed. You never give a homeopathic medicine or take it yourself unless it's called for. But if it's called for and you can use it, then there's an opportunity. Which parenthetically, let me tell you, symptoms, illnesses are actually opportunities. Opportunities to uproot something that is certainly down beneath the surface that we can't see. We have DNA that we have to deal with. We have suppressed illnesses that we have suppressed with drugs through the years. And so if something comes to the fore, oh my gosh, here's our chance. Yay! We can treat it homeopathically and potentially uproot it. Now, I'm not going to tell you what happens absolutely every time. I'm not going to tell you that homeopathy is curative for absolutely everything, or that it will work in every case, or that it will take it to completion. But I will tell you that it is the only medicine that I know that is capable of taking it as far as near completion, often cure, close to cure, good enough. So if my children were getting ear infections and high fevers and I gave them belladonna, It wasn't that I never wanted them to have a fever again. Not necessarily. I just didn't want them to be really sick again. And I didn't want it to happen as often. And I didn't want it to last as long. So less intense, lasting for a shorter period of time, and a larger space between each time that we see something like this returning. So children are supposed to get sick. That's really important. I hope you come away with that, which is why I call it Get Your Kids High. They're supposed to get illnesses. They're not supposed to have them every month. They're not supposed to have one illness that seems as though as soon as you give the antibiotic, it comes right back again, and then you give the antibiotic, it comes right back again, and give the antibiotic, it comes right back again. We don't want that. That is not what we're looking for. But childhood illnesses are part of a child's, what do I say, education. We put a lot of time and effort into education in our children, but we do not talk about the education of their immune system. If we don't allow our children to get normal childhood illnesses when they are young and their immune system is set up to explore that and to experience that, they might end up getting it later in life when their immune systems are not set up for that. So I urge you to allow your children not to worry so much about childhood illnesses. All right, picric acid, belladonna 3. We use belladonna. There are a lot of other belladonna applications. Anyone else have any others that they know that I've taught? And let's see if we have any. And also I'd like to know the who has used belladonna in a different way, or have you used belladonna with your children for fevers, and what was your experience? How do you know when to stop a remedy? Good question. How do you know if you're giving someone, let's say Tylenol for a headache, how do you know when to stop? This is the easiest way to learn this. When do you know when to stop? Do you give the medicine for a year? If you have a fever on, June 16th, 17th, do you continue giving it? No. Do you give it for, if the headache stopped on June 17th after giving Tylenol, acetaminophen, or something like that, do you give it for another week? No. When do you stop? You stop when the illness is gone. So when we're talking about acutes, and that's what we're talking about here, acute has a natural beginning and a natural end. When it's a chronic condition, now we're talking, that's a whole nother world. It touches on it, knowing when to stop. When you're done, you're done. But the problem is that homeopathy has a reputation for being considered, when people first learn about it, that it's holistic. And is it holistic? I don't know. I don't think it's all as holistic as people think it is. And so what I mean by that, and it is regulated by the FDA as a drug. These are medicines, not supplements, not herbs, not vitamins, not essential oils. Homeopathy is a specific kind of medicine. And so when the medicine is given and the condition is completed, we don't give the medicine any longer. We're done. We're finished. So with my son who had that fever, when he got up to play, I did not give him belladonna. Why? Because there were no symptoms. He wasn't sick anymore. And I didn't suppress the symptoms. I didn't hide them with Tylenol or acetaminophen or antibiotics. That's hiding the symptoms. That doesn't get rid of the disease. It just hides the outward expression of the illness. But by treating the condition and the person with that condition, with homeopathy, now we can just allow the medicine to fully act. Or if we had chosen to just let our kids get high and just let them have a fever for a couple of days, 2, 3 days, make sure they're hydrated the whole time. Food is not important. Don't worry for a second if a child's not eating when they're sick. That's the way the body is supposed to work. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about nutrient dense. All we want is fluids. Water. Water with bioplasma in it. That's all the 12 cell salts mixed in it. Water with maybe a little lemon juice or with bioplasma. I've got a drink on a concoction that I make, that I've made for years, that's on my blog. And I think it's called Peter's, what's the title of that blog?
Just put it out in an email.
You did?
Yeah.
My husband said it was just put out in an email. But it was it was an alternative to, what's that drink that everyone drinks in the summer? A It's got electrolytes in it. It's an alternative. And so that was the title. If I can remember that, it'll come to me in a minute.
Associated with skin.
Yeah, no, not skin. It's a,
No,
you did. You put it out with skin. Okay. Yeah, sea salt. Absolutely. Thank you very much. I put sea salt in the drink as well. Some sea salt, maybe a little bit of yogurt whey. I put in maybe the cell salts, the bioplasma, maybe a little fresh lemon juice, etc. So how can China help with hydration? China can help, but China's not so much at the moment of the fever as well. I suppose you could use it then too, now that I think of it, but it's more after the fatigue and the dehydration that comes after an illness or at the tail end of the illness. Then China is definitely a good one. Absolutely. All righty. Okay, I used it to stop my baby's seizures. Yes, belladonna will abort seizures. Belladonna is used in seizure conditions, non-febrile seizure conditions. Let's see what else we have here. Belladonna, I used it to stop my, my babesia seizures. Oh, I see. Okay, yep, seizures. Gallstone pain. Yes, thank you, Pamela. Gallstone pain, belladonna. Kidney pain, kidney stone pain, belladonna. And you use it frequently, every few minutes if you need to, because the pain is excruciating. Shingles, you bet. Absolutely. Yes, thank you for mentioning that, Michelle. Stop when symptoms end. Thank you, Polly. You're right. What belladonna potency for teething? I usually use 30, but I always use chamomilla 200. There we go. Ditch the Gatorade. Thank you very much. Gatorade is the drink. So many people use Gatorade for when they're out in the sun. And my sons, all three of them, when they were in high school and college, did landscaping, and they would work in the hot weather. And I would make this drink, and they would be able to work all the way through the whole day and not wilt, in spite of the heavy duty work that they were doing in the heat. So yes, it's an alternative to Gatorade by making just what we talked about with the salts. Thank you very much. What's that? Yes, you did. Thank you very much. Yes, ditch the Gatorade. Thank you. Oh, definitely it's purer than sports drinks. Yeah, and it is very tasty. It's quite delicious. It's also great during any dehydration issue, such as during labor. Great combination for labor, bioplasma, salt, etc. To remain hydrated. Absolutely. I think we have let's see if we've got any questions that pertain to tonight. China can help. Babesia seizure, very good point. It is, if you look up in your Materia Medica under belladonna, I know I usually write mostly in my Materia Medica about acutes, but I talk about chronics too, and you'll see belladonna is excellent. Oh, thank you, Judy. Sanguinaria 200 with belladonna 6. That is for sinus pain, sinus infections. Sanguinaria is sinuses. Belladonna is the pain. And if there's an infection, belladonna is great for infections as well. I've used belladonna for a burn. Yes, from the stove. Yes, because it's extreme hot, bright red, very painful. Yeah, well, that brings up chickenpox issues. What about older people getting shingles after chickenpox? That's a whole nother discussion. I could talk about that at some point, hopefully. Let's see, if she's responding positively to the remedy, then it's not likely that she will prove it. You bet. If you give it to her and nothing happens, then continue to give it to her. She might be susceptible to prove it. Very hard to prove belladonna, in my estimation. If you're following the rules, follow the rules. Don't give it just because, perhaps, maybe. Make sure that it stands up to rubrics court, as one of my teachers used to say. Jeremy Shear, by the way. You want it to be rational, a rational decision. I'm giving this belladonna because the fever is super high. I'm giving this belladonna because the throat is extremely painful. It's strep throat. I'm giving the belladonna, etc. And then you give the remedy and you watch and you watch and you watch. See, with my son, I only had to give 1 dose and he went right to sleep. Sometimes it takes 2 doses, sometimes 3 doses, sometimes 4 doses. If after the 4th dose for an acute situation, such as that, that's when it's time to abandon that medicine and go to the next best chosen homeopathic medicine. And so, folks, I have to dash off. I have to go teach a class. In fact, if you're not in any of our study groups, consider doing it. That's exactly what I'm going to do now. I'm going to be meeting with a group and answer questions that they have. And I want to encourage you all to do good work on a day-to-day basis for yourselves, your families, your neighbors, your church mates, your pets, your wild stock. Do good work because it feels really good at the end of the day. All right, everyone. God bless. Mwah! See you next week. Bye.